I earned my degree online at Arizona State University. I chose to get my degree at ASU because I knew that I'd get a quality education, they were recognized for excellence, and that I would be prepared for the workforce upon graduating. To be associated with ASU, both as a student and alum, it makes me extremely proud, and having experienced the program, I know now that I'm set up for success. Learn more at asuonline.asu.edu.
Hello, and welcome to Around the Political World with John Ruffman. I am your host, John Ruffman. If you're a fan of the show, make sure to hit the follow button on the top right of Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you are listening at this very moment. When you hit follow, leave a review or share an episode with a friend. It helps other people discover the show, keeps us going. As I like to point out each and every day, it expands our base. There is a lot of news to talk about this morning, but I want to begin with the death of Jesse Jackson, civil rights icon, Democratic Party activist, presidential candidate. And I want to explain that many today are eulogizing Jesse Jackson for what he did in a positive way. And that is a good thing. After all, speaking ill of the dead is not particularly positive. But I want to remind people of a couple of things. First of all, Jesse Jackson was not the first African American to run for president. The first major African American candidate in my lifetime was Shirley Chisholm, the congresswoman from New York, who set off on what she called the Chisholm Trail in order to revolutionize American politics in 1972. Jackson did run for president as a Democrat in 1984 and 1988. And I had real differences with Jesse Jackson. And what I'd like to do is explain what my differences were, so you understand. I objected to the fact that Jesse Jackson referred to Jews as Jaimes. I objected to the fact that he called New York Jaimetown. I objected vigorously to his description of Zionism as a pernicious weed strangling the flower of Judaism. I opposed vigorously his embrace of Yasser Arafat, then at the height of his terrorist activities. Jesse Jackson symbolized to me someone who was, frankly, not on the same page as I was on those issues. And I had the opportunity in 1987, as he was running for president in 1988, he came to San Francisco in 87 at an event at the Fairmont Hotel sponsored by Walter Shorenstein. I was invited to attend. All of the Democratic candidates for president were there except for Michael Dukakis, whose wife Kitty represented him very ably. But I was advised, John, take it easy on Jackson. Don't confront him. Well, of course, that is not my nature. We had about 20 minutes, theoretically, with each of the prospective candidates. We sat in a room and the candidates rotated from room to room. And when Jesse Jackson came into our room, I immediately posed a question. And a lot of people were concerned. Would I be confrontational? So I simply asked this question. Mr. Jackson, I want to know simply this. Based on your record, Jaimetown, Yasser Arafat, Zionism a pernicious weed, if you were a Jew, would you vote for Jesse Jackson? I had the lead question, and we only had about 20 minutes with each candidate, but interestingly enough, Jackson decided to really speak and answer me directly. And he did for 45 minutes, setting the whole day back. But it was a fascinating thing because Jackson defended his positions, would not apologize, and when I asked him that question, if you were a Jew, would you vote for Jesse Jackson? Well, he was very evasive. The answer is, of course, no. I don't think if he had been a Jew, he would have voted for Jesse Jackson. And I frankly couldn't vote for Jesse Jackson. And as a leader in the Raoul Wallenberg Jewish Democratic Club in San Francisco, we actually passed a resolution in our club stating that we would not support Jesse Jackson if he were the Democratic candidate for president or vice president in 1988. I want you to know that I had respect for Jackson for much of his fine work, particularly voter registration. And when we were given the opportunity at George Washington High School in San Francisco to have Jesse Jackson speak to the students, I was asked what I thought. And I said, by all means, bring Mr. Jackson in. Let the students see him. Let them hear him. Jackson's appearance was a fine tribute to the fact that we have to have diversity of thought, even when we disagree with people. The other lesson I learned from Jesse Jackson and my encounters with him was that you can disagree with someone, and the best thing to do when you disagree is to state that disagreement publicly. When Jackson decided in 1992 not to run for president, he still offered himself as a potential candidate for vice president. And many of you will recall that fascinating moment. But the important element for me is that Jesse Jackson was not the John Baptist, if you will, John the Baptist for Barack Obama. They both came from Chicago. They had a very tense relationship, and that is well documented by those who have studied the life of Jesse Jackson. What he did do that was positive was voter registration. He pushed hard, using the term push, for voter registration throughout this country. And I must tell you, for that alone, Jesse Jackson deserves to be remembered in a positive way. There's much more I could say about Jesse Jackson and his history, but let it simply be said, as all the tributes roll in, and they will roll in, please remember the things that he did which were not so stellar, which we don't have to go into today, but which certainly impacted my view of Jesse Jackson. There is another subject I want to touch on this morning that to me is very important. The third round of talks between Russia and Ukraine opened in Geneva today. Now, the talks have not been successful. And indeed, even on the eve of this third round of talks, the Russians have pounded Kiev, Ukraine, and major cities in Ukraine just today. That's right. Those drones are flying, those missiles are flying, the destruction and the death continue. And yet, there are talks that are now taking place. If, in fact, Russia wants to end the conflict, they need to withdraw completely from Ukraine. You and I know that isn't going to happen, and Ukraine has indicated they will not compromise in terms of territory nor their sovereignty. So I don't see an end to this conflict. If a ceasefire were achieved, that would probably be a very good thing, but it will not lead to a peace agreement because Vladimir Putin is determined to destroy Ukraine, pure and simple. He wants it back. Remember, Ukraine was part of the Union of Soviet Socialist Republics, and that is precisely where Vladimir Putin lands. Ukraine should be a part of Russia. We are also watching greatly the situation going on in the Middle East. As you know, the Iranians have rebuffed what Donald Trump is suggesting. That is an end to their nuclear program and an end to their missile development program. It would seem to me that, again, we are headed to a confrontation in the Middle East. And there is no doubt that with now the Abraham Lincoln and the Gerald R. Ford, two ships ready for battle, now in place, that Donald Trump is ramping up what needs, in his mind, to be done. I am no friend of the Iranian regime. And believe me, I would like to see the Iranian regime replaced. But, and it's a big but, remember that there is a constraint when it comes to Iran. And that is, how far can we go in terms of removing the mullahs? This, my friends, is another critical moment in terms of Donald Trump's diplomacy. And speaking of diplomacy, something happened this last week, which was to me, again, critical. there was a meeting which took place to define the role of America and Europe and the world in terms of America's role. And all of you know that at this conference, Marco Rubio stood up and delivered what some are calling the best talk he's given as Secretary of State. But it does not obviate the fact, and it is a clear and present fact, that it is not a new world order we are talking about. The Europeans expressed their views very strongly, saying that they no longer feel they can count on the United States. There is only one reason why Europe is saying what it's saying, and that, my friends, is because of Donald Trump. Donald Trump's redefinition of our relationship with Europe and his redefinition of where we stand in terms of the alliances that have been forged since the end of World War II are deeply concerning. World leaders stood up in Munich and made the statement clearly and precisely that the world has changed, and Europe really feels that it can no longer count on the United States. I want my views to be known. These alliances need to be reestablished firmly because the United States and Europe are linked and need to be linked in terms of world order. And there is no doubt in my mind that Donald Trump, the great disruptor, has done great damage, and all you had to do was listen carefully to what was said at this security conference. There is deep and abiding concern about the United States of America and its continued role in the world. We need to strengthen our alliances with our European allies. We need to strengthen NATO. We need to be clear that the United States of America stands firm with its allies. And the fact that Donald Trump is now advocating essentially a withdrawal from those alliances that have held since the end of World War II and been vital to the security of the world, frankly, concern me greatly. We have real challenges, without any doubt. And may I say that Donald Trump's views of Europe and the world are not helping to de-escalate tensions. One other topic that I want to raise has to do with the forthcoming elections that will take place in the United States in November of this year. They are the midterm elections, and Donald Trump and his administration continue to assault the integrity of our election system in one of the most pernicious things that a president of the United States can do. He is undermining our view of the safety and the fairness of American elections. With all the rumblings from Donald Trump about fraud, no fraud was proven in the election of 2020. His continued claims that he won that election, and in fact, in the case of Minnesota, that he carried Minnesota 3 times, which he didn't. He lost Minnesota 3 times. The fact that he can turn to California and accuse California of having a corrupt election system. The fact that Donald Trump continues to undermine the integrity of American elections is, to me, profoundly concerning. We must understand that the damage that Donald Trump is doing to the American system by challenging the integrity of our elections is a danger to all of us. And, my friends, a danger to the world. This message from me is not said lightly, because I believe fundamentally that voting is our vehicle for participation in American democracy. We are the ones who must have faith in the integrity of our American election system. And the fact that this president continues to talk about federalizing the elections, which is clearly unconstitutional, the fact that this president continues on the path of undermining election integrity is something that must concern all of us. From the point of view of domestic politics, it is something that matters greatly. And I am raising it this morning with you because we cannot set it aside. There are a lot of fast-moving things going on in the world, in foreign policy, in domestic policy. I understand that. But I also understand with absolute clarity that if we do not have faith in the American system, if the world does not have faith in the American system of elections, frankly, we will be in deep trouble. So I am an advocate today and every day for election integrity, which we already have. And Donald Trump's decision to wage war against that system is, to me, the ultimate disgrace of this president. Thanks for tuning into another episode of Around the Political World with John Rothman. I'd love to hear your thoughts on today's episode. You can write a review on Apple Podcasts, drop a comment on YouTube or Spotify, and click any of the links in the show notes to connect with me on social media. Remember that on Friday, I will answer your questions. Make sure you include your name and your question, and Gogo Zoger, the wonderful producer of this podcast, will summarize them, and we will ask them directly and answer them directly so everyone can hear. Remember, please, to share this episode with a friend or colleague so we can continue to grow and expand, which, of course, is our goal. This show has been getting so much positive attention that we're excited to bring on advertising support. You can hear it at the beginning and the end of each podcast. And, of course, our hope is that this will help to create more opportunities for Around the Political World with John Rothman. All right, that's it for today. I will be back tomorrow. My deep appreciation to Gogo Zoger for all of her wonderful efforts. And, of course, to all of you for tuning in to Around the Political World with John Rothman. See you tomorrow.
If you like the show, please take a moment to rate, review, and subscribe. It really does help the show to grow. Thank you for listening.